Commander Valix gripped the metal railing of the command deck as the red warning lights bathed the bridge in an ominous glow. The tactical display showed a single blip moving through space like a predator stalking its prey. In his 23 years of service with the Galactic Coalition Defense Force, he had never seen anything like it. The Nexus Prime system was supposed to be untouchable. 3 massive gas giants created natural barriers, asteroid fields provided additional cover, and the defense station itself was a marvel of engineering. Built into a hollowed-out moon, it bristled with plasma cannons, shield generators, and docking bays for the Coalition's most powerful warships. 57,000 beings from across the galaxy called it home, making it the nerve center of Coalition military operations. "Analysis report," Valix barked. His 4 eyes focused on the main screen. Ensign Crix, a young Zenthari with nervous clicking sounds coming from his throat, bent over his instruments. "Sir, the vessel is... I don't know how to explain this. The hull composition shows materials that don't exist in our databases. Energy readings are completely off our measurement scales." The sensor operator, a blue-skinned Valdorian named Yesh, looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Commander, the ship's energy signature is stronger than our entire defense grid. That's impossible for a vessel of its size." Valix felt his stomach drop. The approaching ship looked small on their screens, maybe the size of a heavy cruiser. But if their readings were correct, it packed more power than their entire fleet combined. "Could it be some kind of new weapon system?" asked Lieutenant Borax, the tactical officer. "Unknown technology, sir," Yesh replied, her voice trembling. "Whatever they're using for propulsion, it's nothing we've ever seen. No plasma trails, no gravitational distortions, nothing. It's like they're bending space itself." The massive defense station hummed with activity around them. Automated systems tracked thousands of objects in space, from supply ships to patrol craft. The Coalition prided itself on knowing everything that moved within 100 light-years of Nexus Prime. Yet this vessel had appeared without warning, as if it had materialized from empty space. "Attempt contact on all frequencies," Valix ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The communications officer, a multi-armed hexapod named Zelix, worked frantically at his console. "Broadcasting on all known channels, sir. Emergency frequencies, diplomatic channels, even old mining guild frequencies." Static filled the bridge speakers. The mysterious ship continued its approach, completely ignoring their attempts at communication. Its trajectory was perfect, aimed directly at their position like an arrow fired by a master archer. "Sir," Yesh called out, "long-range sensors are picking up something strange. The ship's hull seems to be shifting, like it's made of liquid. Metal that's constantly changing shape." Valix squinted at the enhanced image on the main display. The vessel looked sleek and predatory, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. There were no visible weapons ports, no recognizable engine exhausts, nothing that matched any known ship design in the galaxy. The bridge doors hissed open, and Admiral Tharix stormed in, his reptilian scales bristling with agitation. The Saurian admiral was known throughout the fleet for his tactical brilliance and unshakable calm under pressure. Seeing him, this rattled sent a chill through the bridge crew. "Status report, Commander," Tharix demanded, his forked tongue flicking. "Out to taste the air. Unknown vessel, Admiral. Appeared without warning at the system's edge. It refuses to respond to our communications and shows no signs of altering course." Tharix's golden eyes studied the tactical display with intense focus. "Distance? 4 million kilometers and closing steadily, sir. Time to intercept? At current speed, approximately 47 minutes. The Admiral's claws clicked against the metal console. "Scramble all defensive fleets. I want every available ship between us and that thing. Deploy the Titan-class battlecruisers in a wall formation. Ready all planetary defense systems." Throughout the station, alarms began blaring. The sound echoed through metal corridors as thousands of Coalition personnel rushed to battle stations. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden bays, their engines lighting up space like angry fireflies. Heavy cruisers and destroyers moved into position, creating a massive defensive wall around the station. Valix watched the deployment with growing unease. The approaching vessels seemed insignificant compared to their massive fleet. They had over 200 warships, including 12 Titan-class battlecruisers that could crack planets. Yet something about the stranger's steady, relentless advance filled even the most experienced officers with a creeping sense of dread. "Commander," Zelix suddenly called out, his multiple arms working frantically at the communications console. "We're receiving a transmission." The bridge fell completely silent. Even the usual hum of the station's system seemed to fade away. Every eye turned toward the main speaker as a clear, calm voice spoke in perfect galactic standard. "This is Captain Legie 1 of the Terran vessel Indomitable. We are here for our people." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Valix felt his blood turn to ice. Terrans? The primitive species from the Outer Rim? It was impossible. The Coalition had classified them as barely capable of basic spaceflight, suitable only for manual labor in the mining colonies. Yet here was a Terran ship, somehow possessing technology that made their most advanced vessels look like children's toys. The bridge erupted in confused chatter as crew members from different species clicked, hissed, and growled their disbelief. Terrans? The same beings they had classified as barely intelligent enough to operate mining equipment. Lieutenant Borax, a hulking Krogan with tusks protruding from his lower jaw, slammed his fist on his console. "Sir, this has to be some kind of trick. Terrans can barely figure out basic energy weapons, let alone build ships like that." Admiral Tharix's golden eyes narrowed as he studied the data streaming across his personal screen. "Impossible," he muttered, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "Terrans don't have spacefaring technology beyond crude chemical rockets. Our intelligence reports show they're still fighting with projectile weapons on their homeworld. But Captain..." Lee's voice came through the speakers again, cutting through their confusion like a blade. The tone was steady and unwavering, with the confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Admiral Tharix, we know you can hear us. We have documented evidence of over 50,000 humans enslaved across your territories. You have 1 hour to begin their immediate release." Commander Valix felt his 4 hearts skip a beat. How did this Terran know the Admiral's name? How did they know about their slave operations? With trembling claws, he pulled up the slave registry files on his personal display, hoping to find some explanation. The data that appeared made his blood run cold. Thousands upon thousands of entries filled the screen. Humans purchased from frontier traders, classified as expendable workforce, and scattered across mining operations throughout Coalition space. The records showed purchase prices, transport costs, and casualty rates that would make even the most hardened soldier sick. Mining Station Omega-12, 847 human workers, 23% casualty rate. Asteroid Belt 7, 1,200 human laborers, working 16-hour shifts. Gas Giant Refinery Complex, 2,300 humans, life expectancy 3.2 years. The list went on, each entry representing lives treated as nothing more than equipment to be used and discarded. "How did they get access to our classified databases?" Valix whispered, but his question was interrupted by a sudden change in the tactical display. "Admiral," Ensign Crix's voice cracked with terror, "the Terran vessel is... It's not what we thought. Our sensors were being fooled somehow." The main screen flickered and adjusted, revealing the true size of the approaching ship. What they had mistaken for a standard frigate was actually a massive dreadnought, its true dimensions hidden by some form of advanced cloaking technology. The vessel was easily 3 times the size of their largest Titan-class battlecruiser, with a hull that seemed to shimmer and bend light around it. "By the 7 moons of Zenthar," breathed Lieutenant Yesh, her blue skin turning pale. "That thing could carry 50,000 troops and enough firepower to level a continent." The ship's design was unlike anything in Coalition databases. It moved through space like a living creature, its surface rippling with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Weapon ports became visible along its hull, but they didn't match any known energy weapon configurations. Suddenly, every communication console on the bridge lit up at once. Priority messages flooded in from across Coalition space, each one more panicked than the last. "Sir, incoming priority message from Mining Station Kepler 7, Communications Officer Zelix announced, his multiple arms working frantically to manage the incoming calls. The holographic display activated, showing Station Chief Gorvek, a heavy-set reptilian whose normally composed demeanor had cracked completely. His scales were flushed with stress colors, and his eyes darted around nervously. "Admiral, we have a massive problem," Gorvek stammered. "The humans in our labor camps, they're rioting. They somehow received your transmission with that Terran ship, and now they're demanding immediate release. They've taken control of mining. Complex 7 and are holding our supervisors hostage." Before Tharix could respond, another transmission came through from Station Chief Vortak of the Helios mining facility. "Admiral, the humans here have gone completely crazy. They're singing some kind of battle song and have somehow armed themselves with mining equipment. We've lost contact with 3 security teams." Similar reports flooded in from across Coalition space. Mining Station Delta Prime, the asteroid processing facility, gas giant refinery complex Alpha. Everywhere humans were enslaved, they had simultaneously risen up in coordinated rebellion. "How is this possible?" Tharix demanded, his claws digging into the metal railing. "These facilities are spread across hundreds of light years. There's no way they could coordinate without our communication networks detecting it." Ensign Crix looked up from his sensor station with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of quantum communication network. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. The signals are somehow traveling faster than light without using our relay stations." Commander Valek stared at the tactical display showing the human ship's steady approach. "They've been watching us. All this time they've been watching and planning." The realization hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. The primitive humans had been playing a long game, allowing themselves to be enslaved while secretly developing technology that made Coalition science look like Stone Age tools. Every captured human had been a spy. Every mining operation an intelligence gathering post. Captain Lee's voice returned over the speakers. But now there was a hint of steel beneath the calm exterior. The pleasant, diplomatic tone was giving way to something far more dangerous. "You have 58 minutes remaining, Admiral. I suggest you don't waste them." The countdown had begun, and everyone on the bridge knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. The age of human slavery was over, and the beings who had profited from it were about to learn what happened when you awakened sleeping giants. Admiral Tharix's reptilian features hardened into a mask of cold determination. His golden eyes swept across the tactical display, taking in the positions of his massive fleet. 2 centuries of Coalition dominance had taught him one lesson above all others. Overwhelming force solved every problem. All ships, attack formation. "Target the Terran vessel," he commanded, his voice echoing through the communication channels to every Coalition warship in the system. The response was immediate and terrifying to behold. 200 Coalition warships moved into position like a pack of predators surrounding their prey. Titan-class battlecruisers, each one capable of glassing a continent, formed the front line. Behind them, heavy cruisers and destroyers spread out in perfect attack formations that had been drilled for decades. Commander Valek watched the deployment with a mixture of awe and dread. "Sir, combined firepower analysis shows we can deliver enough energy to reduce a small moon to space dust." The human ship, still looking impossibly small compared to their armada, continued its steady approach. It made no evasive maneuvers, launched no defensive drones, didn't even raise what appeared to be energy shields. It simply moved forward like a shark swimming through calm water. "Perhaps they don't understand what they're facing," suggested Lieutenant Borax, his tusks gleaming as he bared them in what passed for a Krogan smile. Primitives often freeze when confronted with superior technology, but something in the human ship's perfect trajectory suggested otherwise. There was no panic, no desperate attempts at communication, no begging for mercy, just cold, calculated movement toward their position. "Fire at will," Tharix commanded. The space around the Terran vessel erupted in a display of destruction that would have been visible from 3 star systems away. Brilliant energy beams lanced out from dozens of ships, their blue-white plasma hot enough to melt through a planet's crust. Particle cannons fired streams of accelerated matter that could punch through the heaviest armor. Fusion torpedoes streaked through the void, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city. The combined assault lit up the darkness of space like a miniature star being born. Energy readings spiked so high that several bridge stations automatically shut down to prevent overload. The light was so intense that the main screen had to dim to prevent crew members from being blinded. When the brilliant display finally faded, every being on the bridge held their breath. The human ship remained completely untouched. A shimmering field surrounded the vessel, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. The Coalition's devastating barrage hadn't just been blocked, it had been absorbed, bent around the ship like light passing around a black hole. The laws of physics seemed to twist and bend in the space around the human vessel. "Impossible," Valix whispered, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. "Our weapon, they passed right through it, like it wasn't even there." Ensign Crix looked up from his sensor station, his young face pale with shock. "Sir, energy readings show our entire barrage was somehow redirected into subspace. The ship's defensive field is manipulating space-time itself. The Indomitable's response was swift and devastating, but nothing like what the Coalition expected. Instead of returning fire with energy weapons, the human ship launched what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. They looked almost primitive compared to the advanced plasma cannons and particle beams the Coalition used. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. The kinetic rounds moved at a significant fraction of light speed, their passage through space creating visible distortions in the fabric of reality. When they struck Coalition shields, the results were catastrophic. Energy barriers that could withstand direct hits from fusion bombs simply ceased to exist, the metal projectiles passing through them like they were made of paper. The first Titan-class battlecruiser to be hit didn't explode. It simply came apart. The kinetic round punched clean through the ship's hull, severing power conduits and structural supports with surgical precision. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as its own weapon systems overloaded. Evasive maneuvers. Tharix shouted, but his order came too late for the lead squadron. 12 Coalition warships exploded in brilliant fireballs as the human projectiles found their marks. Each shot was perfectly aimed, striking critical systems with impossible accuracy. The explosions lit up space like a string of deadly fireworks, debris and burning plasma spreading in all directions. The human ship moved through the chaos with impossible grace, its hull seeming to phase in and out of normal space. Coalition returned fire either passed harmlessly through empty air where the ship had been a moment before, or struck against defensive fields that made their attacks look like children throwing pebbles at a mountain. Captain Kim Junho's voice cut through the screaming comm chatter from damaged Coalition ships. His tone was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in its certainty. "Captain Kim Junho to all Coalition vessels, you are outmatched. Stand down immediately, or we will interpret your continued aggression as a declaration of war against humanity." The warning was ignored as desperate Coalition commanders ordered their ships to continue firing. Their response was answered by another salvo of kinetic projectiles from the Indomitable, but this time the human ship demonstrated something even more frightening than its destructive power. Precision. Instead of destroying the attacking vessels, the projectiles surgically disabled them. Engine sections were severed with millimeter accuracy. Weapon systems were specifically targeted and destroyed while leaving life support intact. Communication arrays were knocked out while navigation systems remained functional. It was a display of technological superiority so complete that it bordered on the insulting. The humans weren't just defeating the Coalition fleet, they were toying with it, demonstrating that they could have destroyed every ship in seconds if they had chosen to do so. In 15 minutes, half the Coalition fleet was either disabled or destroyed. The survivors broke formation and scattered in retreat, their commanders unable to comprehend the technology they faced. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds fled like frightened animals before a single human vessel. Commander Valix's voice was hollow as he delivered the final devastating report. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. There are more of them coming." The tactical display updated, and Admiral Tharix felt his heart stop beating. Dozens of new contacts were appearing throughout the Nexus Prime system as a full human fleet decloaked around their supposedly impregnable stronghold. Each ship was as large and advanced as the Indomitable, their combined presence turning the entire system into a human-controlled zone. The age of coalition supremacy was over, ended not by politics or diplomacy, but by the simple, brutal mathematics of technological superiority. The emergency lights cast eerie red shadows across the walls as Admiral Tharix and his senior staff hurried through the maze of corridors leading to the underground command bunker. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the metal walls, mixing with the distant rumble of explosions from the surface. Nexus Prime's mighty defense grid, built over decades and considered the strongest in the galaxy, was being systematically destroyed by the human fleet with terrifying efficiency. The bunker itself was a marvel of coalition engineering, carved deep into the moon's rocky core and protected by layers of armor plating that could withstand direct hits from fusion bombs. Emergency blast doors sealed shut behind them with heavy metallic clangs, cutting off the chaos above. But even here, 3 kilometers below the surface, they could feel the vibrations of the battle raging in space. Commander Valex's scaled hands trembled as he activated the emergency communication systems. His 4 eyes darted between multiple screens showing the catastrophic damage to their once mighty stronghold. Sir, preliminary reports show that the human fleet has disabled 73% of our orbital defense platforms. They're not destroying them completely, just taking out weapons and shields while leaving life support intact. Casualties? Tharix asked, though he dreaded the answer. Surprisingly light, Admiral. It's like they're deliberately avoiding killing our people. They could have wiped out the entire station in minutes, but they're being selective. Lieutenant Borax, the massive Krogan tactical officer, slammed his fist on a nearby console. This is impossible. How can primitives who barely discovered space travel have technology that makes our best ships look like toys? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the bunker flickered with urgent priority messages. The communication system was lighting up with reports from across Coalition space, each one more devastating than the last. Status of the mining operations? Tharix demanded, his voice tight with controlled panic. Valex's face went pale as he read the incoming reports. All human slaves have been liberated, sir. Every single facility. Our security forces offered no resistance after witnessing the fleet's capabilities. In fact, many of our guards actually helped with the evacuation once they realized what was happening. The reports painted a picture of complete organizational collapse. At mining station Omega-12, the human workers had somehow unlocked their containment cells simultaneously. Gas giant refinery complex Alpha reported that their enslaved humans had taken control of the facility's communication array and were broadcasting their locations to the approaching rescue ships. Asteroid Belt Processing Station 7 had simply gone dark after reporting that their human workers were now in control of the entire operation. How did they coordinate this? Tharix whispered. These facilities are spread across hundreds of light years. The main display suddenly activated without any input from the Coalition staff. The screen showed a woman in a simple dark uniform standing on what was clearly the bridge of the Indomitable. Behind her, holographic displays showed tactical information that made Tharix's blood run cold. The human fleet had complete real-time intelligence on every Coalition military installation in the galaxy. The woman was middle-aged, with graying, hair pulled back in a practical style, and eyes that seemed to look right through the camera into Tharix's soul. There was something in her expression that spoke of absolute authority, the kind that came not from rank or politics, but from the quiet confidence of someone who held overwhelming power and knew exactly how to use it. "I am Captain Lee Ji-won, of the Terran Defense Force," she began, her voice carrying the weight of billions of lives behind it. "I represent the United Earth Coalition and the 54 billion humans of our home system." The number hit Tharix like a physical blow. His heart stopped beating for a moment as the implications sank in. 54 billion? The Coalition's intelligence estimates had put the entire human population at less than 10 million scattered primitives struggling with basic technology. They had been wrong by a factor of over 5,000. "Impossible," he breathed. "Our scouts reported a barely inhabited world with primitive cities and crude technology." Captain Lee's slight smile suggested she had heard his whispered words. "For the past 30 years we have watched your treatment of our people in silence. We have documented every crime, every abuse, every death. Every human you enslaved was a volunteer, Admiral. They knew the risks, and they accepted them so that we could gather the intelligence we needed. The screen changed, showing surveillance footage that made several Coalition officers gasp in horror. The images showed the inside of mining stations, transport ships and processing facilities. Humans working in conditions that would have been considered torture for any other species. The footage was crystal clear, obviously recorded by hidden cameras or implanted devices. Transport manifests showing humans sold like cattle, Captain Lee continued as the evidence scrolled past. Financial records of slave purchases. Medical. Reports showing casualty rates that would make war criminals blush. We have it all, Admiral. Every transaction, every death, every moment of suffering. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. 30 years of systematic abuse, all carefully documented and stored. The Coalition had been so focused on hiding their crimes from other galactic powers that they had never considered the possibility that their victims might be gathering evidence. So you will surrender all individuals responsible for the enslavement and abuse of human beings, Captain Lee stated, with the calm authority of someone delivering an ultimatum backed by overwhelming force. You will provide full reparations to the victims and their families. You will submit to trials conducted under Terran justice. Tharix found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a croak. And if we refuse, the slight smile that played at the corners of Captain Lee's mouth was more terrifying than any threat could have been. Admiral, you have seen one ship of our fleet. We have 12,000 more, each more advanced than the last. We have weapons that can crack planets and defenses that render your technology obsolete. But we prefer justice to genocide. The display changed again, showing the human fleet in formation around Nexus Prime. The ships were massive, dwarfing even the Coalition's largest vessels. But it was the smaller craft that truly made Tharix's blood freeze. Thousands of sleek fighters moved through space like schools of metallic fish, their movements so fluid and coordinated that they looked like living creatures rather than machines. You have 24 hours to begin compliance, Captain Lee continued, her voice carrying the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. After that, we will consider the Coalition to be in a state of active war with humanity. And, Admiral, she paused, her eyes seeming to look directly at him through the screen. We've been preparing for this war for 3 decades. The transmission ended, leaving the bunker in complete silence except for the hum of life support systems. Around the room, Coalition officers stared at blank screens, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The galaxy had changed forever in the space of a single conversation. The Coalition's age of dominance was over, ended by a species they had dismissed as primitives, and the most terrifying part was the realization that this had all been planned from the beginning. Humanity had been playing a game that lasted decades, sacrificing their own people to gather intelligence and build the weapons they would need for this moment. The enslaved humans hadn't been victims. They had been soldiers in the longest and most patient military operation in galactic history. 6 months later, former Admiral Tharix stood in the defendant's box of the Terran Justice Station, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his long life. The massive space structure orbited Earth like a gleaming jewel, its crystalline walls offering a perfect view of the blue-green planet below. The sight was breathtaking and humbling at the same time. This supposedly primitive world had just reshaped the entire galaxy with nothing more than patience, planning, and the kind of technology that made Coalition science look like children playing with rocks. The Justice Station itself was a marvel that defied everything Tharix thought he knew about engineering. The structure was larger than most Coalition cities, yet it seemed to float in space as light as a feather. Gravity worked perfectly throughout the facility, but there were no visible generators or gravity plates. The walls themselves seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light, creating an atmosphere that was both alien and strangely comforting. The trials had been unlike anything in galactic history, swift but fair, with a level of organization that spoke of decades of preparation. Coalition leaders responsible for the slave trade faced human judges, but they were represented by both human and alien lawyers who had clearly studied Coalition law as thoroughly as they had studied human justice. The evidence presented was so comprehensive and detailed that most defendants had quickly accepted plea bargains in exchange for cooperation. Tharix had watched hundreds of his former colleagues parade through the courtroom over the past months. Station commanders, fleet admirals, mining supervisors, and slave traders all faced the same calm, methodical justice. The humans had documented everything: financial records, medical reports, surveillance footage, even personal communications. Between coalition officers discussing their human equipment, Judge Park Minji sat behind the bench, a stern woman with kind eyes, who had presided over most of the major trials. She wore simple robes that somehow conveyed more authority than all the elaborate uniforms Tharix had seen in his military career. Her voice was calm and measured as she read the final verdict. Former Admiral Tharix of the Coalition Defense Force, you have been found guilty of crimes against sentience and the systematic enslavement of sapient beings. This court sentences you to 20 years labor rehabilitation to be served assisting in the reconstruction of worlds damaged by coalition mining operations. 20 years. It was more merciful than Tharix had expected, especially considering that some of the mining operations under his command had mortality rates approaching 50%. The humans, it seemed, truly did prefer justice to revenge. Several of his former subordinates had received similar sentences, while the worst offenders, those who had personally tortured or killed human slaves, faced life imprisonment. The most surprising aspect of the trials was the rehabilitation program. Rather than simply locking up the convicted coalition officers, the humans had created a system designed to repair the damage they had caused. Tharix would spend the next 2 decades working alongside human engineers and environmental specialists to restore planets that had been strip-mined, to rebuild ecosystems destroyed by unregulated extraction, and to help establish new colonies for the displaced populations. Through the observation deck's massive windows, Tharix could see the new reality of galactic civilization. Human ships moved through space alongside vessels from every known race, but the relationship was fundamentally different now. Where once the coalition had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, the humans led through cooperation and mutual benefit. A massive human dreadnought passed by the station, its hull shimmering with the same reality-bending technology that had made their weapons so devastating. But instead of bristling with weapons, the ship's cargo bays were filled with medical supplies and construction equipment bound for former coalition worlds. The Terran Defense Force had become the galaxy's protector, patrolling trade routes and defending merchant vessels from pirates with the same ruthless efficiency they had once shown in dismantling the coalition's military. The transformation was visible everywhere. Former coalition slave worlds were now thriving colonies where humans worked alongside Zenthari engineers, Valdorian scientists, and Krogan construction crews. The rigid caste system that had defined galactic society for centuries was being replaced by something unprecedented: actual cooperation between species. Captain Li Jiwon, now promoted to admiral, had become the de facto leader of the new Galactic Council. Her image appeared regularly on news broadcasts, usually showing her mediating disputes between species or overseeing the construction of new joint colonies. Under her guidance, the various races were learning to work together as true partners, rather than the predator-prey relationships that had defined coalition space. The most shocking revelation had come during the trials, when human witnesses revealed the true scope of their long-term planning. Humanity had been aware of galactic civilization for over 50 years, ever since their first crude radio telescopes had detected coalition communications. What the coalition had mistaken for primitive radio emissions were actually carefully crafted signals designed to make human technology appear decades behind its actual capabilities. For half a century, humanity had been preparing. They had built massive shipyards in the outer reaches of their solar system, hidden behind asteroid fields and cloaking technology. They had developed weapons that could manipulate space-time itself, defensive systems that made coalition shields look like tissue paper, and communication networks that operated faster than light, without using any technology the coalition could detect or intercept. The discovery of enslaved humans had merely been the catalyst they needed to reveal themselves. But the evidence presented during the trials made it clear that humanity had always planned to join galactic society. They had simply wanted to ensure they did so from a position of strength, with the power to protect themselves and others from the kind of exploitation that had defined coalition rule. As the guards led Tharix away to begin his sentence, he reflected on the bitter irony of the situation. The coalition had enslaved humans, believing them to be primitives, useful only for manual labor in dangerous mining operations. In reality, they had awakened a sleeping giant that had been quietly watching, learning and preparing for the day it would take its rightful place among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. As Tharix walked through the corridors of the Justice Station, he could see the future taking shape around him. Former coalition territories were already showing signs of unprecedented prosperity under human-guided reconstruction. Mining operations that had once relied on slave labor now employed free workers of all races, with safety standards and fair wages enforced by Terran oversight. The humans had kept their word in every respect. They sought justice, not conquest, but they had also made it crystal clear that any future attempts at slavery, genocide, or systematic oppression would be met with the full force of the Terran Defense Force. The galaxy now had a guardian that possessed both the power to enforce its will and the wisdom to use that power responsibly. The age of the coalition was over, ended not by war or rebellion, but by the simple recognition that a better way was possible. The age of true galactic cooperation had begun, and perhaps Tharix thought as he began his journey toward redemption, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The end.